Hi, how are you, Anna?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Sorry, I have this incredibly overzealous antivirus protection that probably does a really good job of protecting me from things, but also makes it really hard for me to talk using a webcam. It's like any attempt that I make to have to have a sort of face-to-face conversation with someone these days in this COVID-19 world where this is the only face conversations we get, it assumes everyone's trying to attack me. That
Oh no.
just means it's doing its job, I guess.
Yeah, well, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
So how are you?
Yeah, I'm good and bad. On the one hand, it feels like a little bit of cosmic justice, kind of, because I was complaining about the lack of writing time, and now I'm stuck at home, can't go anywhere. I was worried about meeting my writing deadlines because I was going to be on tour in Adelaide and Goulburn and other places, and then suddenly everything's locked down. All I've got to do is write. So on the one hand, I'm fantastic because I love writing. On the other hand, absolutely not, because there's a global pandemic and I'm worried about my parents. And
and then all the bad stuff. So
exactly. And
it's a weird juggle.
It is. And you would think that it would be sort of inspiring. Like, I like to think that one of the things about writers is that no matter how bad a situation gets, we can use it. It becomes, it all gets mixed into the batter or composted or whatever in our brains. But it's also extremely distracting. Like, it's really, really hard to think about anything else.
This is my problem. Every time I sit down, it's like the virus.
Exactly.
So it's very hard to concentrate. Well, that's it. I am now doing this because every time I try and do my own work, I think there's a virus.
Oh, I see.
So I'm managing the children and the school dramas and all of those things. And then, so you're going through all of that. But then every time I try and write on my second book or manage something for the first, my brain is just not in the headspace. Although I'm sure it'll get there. And this is part of it. I always process outwards. So I am now processing outwards through everybody. Thank you.
I was just going to apologize for enabling you for helping you procrastinate from
all your fault.
Work. But yeah, okay. Processing outwards. That's definitely next time I'm bothering my wife instead of doing my work, I'm going to say, I'm just processing outwards. I am working. It's just that I'm also distracting you and myself.
Oh dear. But does this have any remind you at all? I have to tell you, this is my anecdote about Jack. And it's that I was listening to a podcast. I know you're really scared now.
Okay. Yeah. I am.
Don't be scared.
Concerned about where this is going, but okay.
No. My son had a really rough year last year. And at one point he was stuck in the car with me listening to writers' podcasts because he normally doesn't pay any attention to what I'm listening to. And you were on talking about when you were young and not going out and how you started writing. And he heard that bit and then he wrote something. It was a whole moment in his life where he was well, I'm stuck home and I can't go anywhere. And he wrote the most phenomenal thing that he'll never do anything with and drive me bonkers with it because it's so good. And then I told him this morning, I said, talking to Jack today. And he went, oh yeah. And I went, the guy who said the thing, and he went, oh. And it was a moment of, oh. That's like a person. I'm like, yeah, okay. I know we're all old to you, but that one you recognize. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. Tell him I said hello. Isn't it interesting that I think sometimes knowing the author is a real person, like that feels really like a double-edged sword to me, because on the one hand, it definitely inspires kids to write. Like once they have that moment of realizing that the author's name isn't just a way of categorizing the story or sort of the brand of story, it's an actual human being who put it together, then that makes them more inclined to write themselves, I think. But I think it also potentially takes away some of the magic of it. And I know I assume every time I teach a creative writing class, those students, I like to think they'll become better writers, but I also know that they will enjoy my books less in future because they can see exactly what I'm doing. The
mechanics become more obvious.
Yeah, that's right.
My 6-year-old has started editing people. She's desperate to find
Oh.
errors. Everything she reads, she will come at me because she's found one in the past, one in a book that I
Yeah.
will never mention.
Hmm.
And so from then on, she knows, obviously, writers being people, she keeps coming up to me going, "This is wrong. I'm sure this is wrong." And
Yeah.
she'll read it to me. I'm like, "It's not wrong, honey. It's just the sentence." But she's got this editor brain now where she's actually thinking every text is up for discussion.
Right. Okay. Well, which sounds annoying but healthy.
It's
You know,
really bizarre.
it's like a
It's
crucial
either a
state.
wonderful career, yeah. It's either she's all sorted career wise, or she's never going to enjoy books again.
Yeah, that's right. Have you found that it's particularly true if, like, you meet other authors at festivals or doing this or whatever, and you were really excited to meet them because you liked their book, and then either so you're disappointed because then you're like, oh wow, you're not a god or goddess at all, you are a mere mortal, and or even if you're not disappointed, then you read their next book and there's a character where something happens to them, and in the past you might have said, oh wow, that's so imaginative, but now you just
Yes.
go, oh well, that's the story I told you.
Yeah.
You know, that's
I
not
get,
made up.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's really bizarre. I have met and become almost friends with a real idol of mine, Isabel Carmody, who I read a lot of her fantasy books, and she lives in Brisbane. So we run into each other a lot now. We're kind of friends and stuff.
Yeah, right.
And that hasn't changed anything about reading her work in that way. But I think she's so much present in her book. Her voice is so strong. And yet
Yeah.
I've known books I've, read from a long time ago, and I've seen the author speaking, or they've published something since then that's been really questionable, and I find that really difficult. But then I get torn between the writers aren't perfect humans, and they can't be for us to enjoy their books. Like, that can't be the
Yeah.
proviso. You must be clean and perfect for me to like your book. So I'm not quite sure about the ethical dilemma there
Yeah.
on
I
that
think
one.
it's a bit like you can't enjoy a puppet show if you're looking at the puppeteer. It's that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's really hard to suspend your disbelief and think about what the characters want if you're also thinking about what the author wanted, because that robs the characters of all their agency. But I can see why
Yeah.
someone like Isabel Carmody might be the exception, because she's such a larger than life character herself
She is. Yeah.
that
Yeah.
that works really well. So you end up with this weird, I mean, don't get me wrong, Isabel herself, I'm sure, is completely genuine. But for the rest of us
She
who are
is.
just like regular people, there's this pressure to be sort of a writer as a kind of performance artist. Like, you're not just someone who writes, you are a writer, and you have to go about seeming smart and perfect in order for people to still enjoy your books, you know?
Yeah. I'm starting all this. You're telling me I actually haven't had an event as a writer because they're all cancelled.
Right,
So,
because of
so my book
COVID.
comes
I'm
out
so
at the end.
sorry.
So, no, I have, well, but I've taught for a very long time. So I'm used to this idea that you go up and it's like, you're a doctor. You should be standing in front of a class and being doctory and philosophical and knowing everything about everything. When actually, you feel like a bit, I think it's the same thing, the imposter syndrome and acting the role of
Yeah,
person.
maybe that's the bright side to all the cancelled events. Like, you're now a very mysterious figure who people can read your book and only guess at your motive.
It's like, I'm so close, but so far away because they're never
Yeah.
actually going to see us in real life. Yeah.
Well, I think it's really cool that you're doing this, because my concern with everyone being on lockdown, and I have kind of a love-hate relationship with social media. It's mostly hate, if I'm being honest, but I do nevertheless spend a lot of time on it. I think it's
While
bad
hating
for
it.
me, but yeah, exactly. It's bad for me, but it's addictive. But also, publishers really like it because it's free publicity for the book, and by free I mean the author has to
For
do it, the
them,
publisher
yeah,
doesn't.
it's
Yeah,
free
it's
for
free
them.
for
Yeah,
them.
yeah.
So the return on investment is high for them and very low for the author, I think.
This
But
is true.
if it's a matter of we're all in quarantine for 6 months, we can't interact with one another other than via social media, at least I really want people to be talking about books like you are doing, instead of
Yeah,
just panicking, like just scrolling through, looking at more and more and more
yeah.
terrifying things. And oh, look, people are fighting over toilet paper in the supermarkets now. That's not healthy for anybody.
No, and charging $8. somewhere in Western Australia. That was not a good move. Not a good move of that shop. But
Can
yeah,
I
and
buy
didn't want to
shares in
lose.
toilet paper companies? Now feels like a really good time. Or, in fact, in social media. Like, what's the Facebook share price doing? I bet it's high.
I don't. Zoom. Zoom is the new thing. Everyone's zooming everybody, and they're going to
Yeah, okay.
be. Yeah, they're going to have a lot more traffic. I'm
This
very
is
sure.
my first time Zooming, actually.
It was my first time
I've
on
never Zoomed.
Saturday.
Okay, well, you're already like a pro.
I'm totally making this up as I go along. But I wanted the faces. I like the people. And I think whenever I meet someone on social media and I know them there and then I see them in real life, I'm normally really embarrassing and I don't know who they are. And
Yeah.
even though I've shared a year with them, I'll be like, who? What? You know, you don't look like your circle. Or, you know, if I've not quite managed to put them together yet. But once I do, it's fine. And this is making it all tie together.
Yeah.
You know,
My circle, when I'm not plugging a particular book, is in fact this. It's like
okay, that won't help. That will not
no,
help.
exactly. You would not know me from my circle picture. But isn't it weird how much it's like what we were talking about a second ago with the writer thing, where you know the books but you don't know the person, and then you find yourself in this sort of clash between, oh, your books are like this but you seem like this, and the whole fact that they're so different makes you uncomfortable. And it's the same on social media. Like, I know the kinds of things you tweet, so I feel like I know you really well, but then I meet you in person and we're not the friends that I thought we were, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, or the other way around.
Yeah,
And
you
it's
get on
always
really
the
well in
thriller.
person and
It's
you hate
yeah,
their tweets.
yeah. It's always the thriller and horror writers that'll be the nicest. It's a bit like, you know, get it all out in the book. And then the people who write the really lovely books are standoffish, maybe. And you're thinking, this is just so backwards.
Although I would add an extra dimension to that, which is that the children's writers tend to be much more friendly than the adult writers, in my experience. I've met in both circles. And I
Yeah.
think it's because children's writers, no one takes us very seriously. And we can complain about that all we want. But the fact is that being taken, it's
supposed
true.
to say that.
Well, I actually think being taken seriously is bad for you. Like, I don't think that's healthy for anyone. Like,
it would raise expectations way high.
yeah, by all means, like, afford people a measure of respect. But the sort of kowtowing that people do for adult writers goes to their heads, I think, whereas the children's writers are much friendlier, but they also tell the filthiest jokes because it's the opposite of, oh, I've got it all out of my system. Like, they say all the things that they can't do in their books and they say them out loud. Yeah. Terry Denton is horrifying.
That's hilarious. That's great. The first thing my family did when they picked up my book and they saw the pre-order, the pre-versions. I still don't know the words. Arcs, whatever.
Arcs.
First thing they did, looking in the first page, my mum says, "There's a swear word." And my 12-year-old picked up the book. "You swore." I'm like, it's not even proper. It's like freaking. It's like a half swear word. And that's all you have to say. So they're not coping. They're not coping because I don't swear a lot in real life unless I am really on the edge or, drunk or something. So it doesn't come out till then. Yeah.
I've often wondered whether it's more awkward. Maybe this is more true of a reader than a writer. But like, I've written books that have at least one that has a sex scene in it. And I know my parents have read it. And there's a decent chance that someday my children will read it. And I'm wondering what's weirder, like reading a sex scene written by your parent, the author, or reading one written by your child, the author. Do you have any insight in that?
Well, I do know my mum is worried about reading my book, and my daughter's desperate to. So she's trying. They've all promised not to read it till they've got the final one. They wanted to get the bought one.
Right. Okay.
So I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do there. And then my mum's really worried that anything wrong that happens to the character is what she did to me as a teenager or something. And I'm like, Mum, it's fictional. Don't worry. It's probably got more of my angst as a parent than my angst as a child. I've tried to reassure her there. And then I said, and plus, Mum, she kisses girls. I think you're going to have to just remember that. She's like, oh, well, that's fine. Like, that's not the problem. And then if my grandma reads it, my grandma, she's like 94 reading
Yeah.
queer young adult fiction. I think, oh, but then I said to her in the end, and it's taken me probably the 2 years, you know, to actually get to this point where I said, you know what, there's probably nothing I can teach you, Grandma, at 94, so whatever. Just
Yeah.
read it if you
Just
really want to.
do what makes you happy.
But I'm not sure how weird it'll be having my child read what I wrote.
Yeah.
And then hopefully never speak about that. This is my plan. We're good at that. Good family for silence.
Yeah, well, that's another good thing about literature in general, isn't it? Like you can, in particular fiction writing, in my experience, you can take all the things that you would never dare to say out loud, and then you can put them as thoughts in the main character's head, and then step away from it and be like, but it's fiction. It's nothing like me. I would never have a thought like that.
But how do you draw the lines anyway? Where exactly are the lines? You know, that's the beauty of it. They're fuzzy, and you'll all never know.
Mm. Do you find that there are characters who, I mean, so the ARCs have gone out. Have you got any feedback from them yet, or are you still waiting on?
And we've got the print. I've got my real. I actually have a box of them there, but I'm not ready to open it. So I've got
cool, there it is.
You're supposed to hold up your book, not me holding up mine. In fact, you're the only one who's managed to get me to talk about my book at all. I'm normally very good at shutting that down. So I have them.
I'm talking about my book.
You have a lot of books.
I do. Yeah.
I didn't even manage to I was like, write some notes, Anna. Let's be sensible. And I'm like, oh my God, that's like too many titles. They're in different countries, and they're all, you know, these massive things. How do you manage 2 countries? Would you have gone to America anyway to launch?
No, I don't think so. I did go to the USA in 2010 because I had a book. I had a couple of books out in the USA at that point, and I was hoping to do some publicity. But the publisher wasn't willing to fly me over there, and I should have taken that as a sign, but instead I flew over on my own dime. And I did basically one publicity event that was kind of, frankly, this video right now will probably get a lot more views than that that I did was. But it was a useful research trip. I got to go to Houston, Texas to research Hangman. But juggling different countries and different titles and stuff at the moment. So I have a book in the Liars series called No Survivors, right? And that's about to come out in the USA or sometime. And they want to change the title. So they sent an email just this morning to say, so we want to change the title No Survivors for obvious reasons. I'm like, what's obvious about that? And then my wife's like, because of the virus and people are dying. And I'm like, people are dying all the time. Like, no disrespect to the people who are dying, but they literally are all the time. So anyway, I'm open to suggestions.
New titles.
The book where, you know, the Treehouse books by Andy Ginsberg.
Yeah.
I really love, there's a scene from Terry's childhood where his parents will only let him read very safe books. And they have titles like Tomorrow When Nothing Happened and The Day We Did Nothing.
Well, that's going to encapsulate the next 6 months, isn't it? I mean, really.
But the book could be called Everyone Survives. Like, fine.
It could be Small Hope for the future. Oh, no.
It could be called Don't Worry, It All Works Out in the End.
It's still good.
Or something like that.
Yep, good ending promised. And then here, though, 200 minutes of danger.
Oh, yeah. Yep. I've got that here too. Ooh, this is an autographed edition I found somewhere. So that one.
You autographed it, hopefully, not someone else.
Yeah, that does look like my signature, but I think I autographed it and then realized I needed a copy for an event and then immediately purchased it from the bookshop that I just autographed it for, which
That's hilarious.
From time to time. But yeah, so that's the book of short stories. One of the things that I'm trying to do at the moment, because I felt really bad canceling my tour. Like, I'm someone who I hate, like, my fear, back when I still had a day job, I was always terrified of getting sick because then I would have to choose between calling in sick and have the sense that the boss thought I was lazy or hungover or something, or go to work and then inevitably make somebody else sick. And
Yep.
so that was like where my angst was all the time. And so once I became a writer and I started like working from home all the time, I'm like, that will never be a problem again. And then there's like a virus sweeping the globe and I have a mild sore throat. And I'm like, I can't fly to Adelaide. What if I have it? What if I spread it to all these children and all their parents and stuff?
Yeah.
But I still wanted to do something. So what I've been doing lately is just, and by lately, I mean, I did it once yesterday and I'm planning on doing it again today, but I've just been reading chapters of 300 Minutes of Danger live on Instagram because I don't have the energy to make a new video every day to like come up with content like some of those really good YouTubers do. And I don't have as many friends as you, so I can't just interview people to produce content that way.
I'm just inappropriately forward. Come and chat with me.
Well, you gotta be, don't you?
What have I got to lose? I don't know. I get lonely. I sit at home all the time, and events are the one thing that gets me to do something with people, and I love it. I really do. But I need to, if I've got a booking to go to an event, then I have to go because I don't want to break the rules. And so I go and I push through the angst of going out, and then I love it. I love it once I'm out. Yeah. And so if I don't have those happening, I've got to keep the contact with people, or I'll just kind of melt into a little puddle of home life and forget how energizing it can be.
That's interesting to me because so you are quite new at this, and in my experience, yes, you're freshly minted, a brand new author straight off the production line. And I've found that as a general rule, first-time authors or second-time authors, like the whole reason they became writers is because they hate dealing with people. they like to be able to shutter themselves away. And what's a job I can have where I never have to have any kind of interaction with another human being? I know, I'll just sit here typing about imaginary people who can't even see me, ha, 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 ha. And then their book comes out and suddenly they have to learn to be a people person in order to promote the book. But it sounds like you're already well ahead of the curve. You're like, no, I love events. I can talk to people. I can be forward. Those normal new authors.
I'm very much the
like
two
that.
people. I'm the two people. I'm learning a lot about myself. I know I need a lot of time alone.
Yeah, okay.
But at the heart of it, there's just the extrovert side of me that just needs people. But see, teaching consumed me. I wanted to give my whole life to that because I take it so seriously. Then I had children. So I'm like, children? What? How do I do children and teaching? Hang on a minute. That's like conflicting interests.
Yeah.
And so now I've got to manage conflicting interests of the book and the children, but they get older and more independent. And so then it's, that's getting easier. They can do stuff without me. And I just, I don't know, people give me energy. And then otherwise, what would I write about? So,
Yeah, okay.
I have to steal your stories. Tell me stories.
There was a quote from, I forget who it was, but it's they said something like, they were talking about Hollywood and they said, if all we do here is make movies, then eventually we won't be able to make movies about anything other than making movies. It was something like that.
Very postmodern.
And very. Yeah. And it sounded like, a sort of cautionary type thing. But then like La La Land came out and I'm like, oh, people just love movies about people making movies. So why not?
We made the best decision about La La Land. This is a stupid story. I don't know why. We're so over time, but that's okay. Yeah. It was Valentine's Day and I said, we can't go anywhere because, that's life. And so we watched the first half of La La Land and then we turned it off because it was late and we're old. It was great. First half of La La Land. I was just really happy. Nothing bad happened. We got to the best bit where it's all really lovely and then we turned it off. We watched the second half the next night and went, oh, I'm glad we didn't watch this last night. It gets a little bit miserable.
I had the exact opposite experience in that I saw it all in one sitting, but I liked the second half much more than the first. Or I thought it was probably, the first third felt like it was probably a pretty good musical, except that I don't really like musicals. Nothing
That's the key.
wrong with them. Like, I'm glad that other people like them, but I don't personally partake. And then there was the middle third that was kind of had some really interesting things to say about what it's like to be an artist and the kind of compromises you have to make. And then the last third, that's this sort of beautifully sad ending to a love story, except those 3/3 felt like they could have come from completely different movies. Like that brilliant ending felt like it would have worked better if it had also begun like that. And that beginning could only be matched by a wonderfully boppy sort of happy
Yeah.
ending. It's all about
Yeah.
meeting the audience's expectations, isn't it? Meeting and exceeding.
Yeah. And it wasn't quite, yeah, I get that there are problems. But
Mm.
I love musicals. I always want people to just burst into song. Anyone starts singing and I'm a very happy person.
I
So
liked the musical episode of Buffy.
no pressure.
I'll go for that. And also the Hairspray. I liked Hairspray.
Yeah.
But you
And
might
the Buffy
really
one was
enjoy, there's this podcast called The Dragon Friends where they just play Dungeons and Dragons in front of a live
Yeah.
audience. I assume they're not doing it at the moment.
Oh,
But
yeah.
there's this wonderful character in it named Lothario Windswept who always sounds like he's about to burst into song, but never quite does.
Oh,
That's his thing. So
like Brian Blessed. Whenever you hear Brian Blessed, you're like, are you just la la? Yes. I love it.
Exactly like that. Well worth a listen.
Oh, good. We watched Terry Crew playing Dungeons and Dragons as well. That was a good one.
Oh,
It was
really?
a superstar one.
Terry Crews from Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Yeah. And he was on there. Awesome. And then the other guy was a voice actor. And so they had teams. We were just learning. I was learning with my son and we watched that and we were like, oh. So then he expects me to be able to DM like that. I'm like, oh, honey, no, like you got the wrong DM.
Oh man, every now and again I kind of trick my son into playing D&D with me because he's 5 and doesn't really get it, but he does love imagination role play, like I do this, I do that. So every now and again I just tell him, just roll some dice right now, and he does, and then keeps doing the imagination play. And then eventually when I start to say, oh no, that didn't work, you missed, he's like, wait, what is this? Are we playing Dungeons and Dragons again?
You've lured me into it. Actually, what's his name? Patrick Rothfuss was saying... Oh, no, and he's got this whole idea, and I don't know if he's ever made it, of a set of cards, which is like D&D for children, where and it like guides them through in a different way. This is how I play with my 6-year-old, where we'll say, oh, so you've got like an apple and a piece of rope and a little bit of beef jerky, and you're going through the woods and you come across there's a wolf stuck in a hole. What are you going to do? And she has to kind of think it through, given the little things in her backpack.
Yeah,
and then,
okay.
Yeah, and then we can make her roll dice because she knows we roll dice, but she never knows what anything will mean. So we can be like, you did it.
Yeah.
With a 1.
That's really cool. I sometimes think like playing games is fun, but making games can be even more fun in my experience. You'll spend hours like drawing the board and making the cards and stuff, and then kind of 10 minutes playing the game. And that seems like wasted effort, except that the hours of making the game were fun too. So
this will be our life. We need to maybe we should have a recap in a month where we've thought of all the new games because we're all stuck inside.
Totally.
Everyone's going to need them.
Really lovely to see you.
Good luck with your launches of everything.
Enjoy your future chats. I am underqualified, so anything anyone else says that contradicts anything I've said, listen to them and not me.
Sure, I'll put the little proviso. Absolutely.
Here's the books I promised I would hold up.
Do hold them up because I can do a screen capture.
Okay, cheers.
That's great. Thank you.
All right. Back to work. See you later.
The number you have dialed has been changed.